Shalom, my friends. I am Rabbi Simon, and today I am going to reveal to you the most dangerous spiritual law that almost nobody teaches. A law so ancient, so precise, and so merciless that it has destroyed more fortunes, more marriages, more businesses, and more destinies than any external enemy ever could. This law does not care how talented you are. It does not care how hard you work. It does not care how pure your intentions are. If you violate it, your blessings will collapse. If you master it, your life will be unrecognizable within a year. I am not speaking in metaphors. I am not sharing motivational poetry. I am telling you a spiritual fact that the Torah encoded thousands of years ago, that the Kabbalists whispered only to their closest disciples, and that the modern world has almost entirely forgotten. This is the ancient law of silence. And once you understand it, you will never speak about your success, your plans, or your blessings in the same way again. If you are building something right now, a business, a career, a family, a future, and you have ever felt the mysterious sting of things falling apart just when they seemed certain, this message was made for you. Stay with me until the very end, because what I am about to teach you is not information, it is protection. Before I go any further, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, not for me, but for yourself. How many times have you had a brilliant idea, a plan that filled you with fire, a deal that seemed destined for success, a goal that made your heart race with possibility, and the very first thing you did was tell someone about it? You called a friend. You told your family at dinner. You posted a hint on social media, and they congratulated you. They were excited. You felt seen. You felt validated. You felt for a brief and intoxicating moment like someone who had already won. And then, something shifted. The deal fell through. The motivation evaporated. The energy that had been so alive inside you simply dissolved. You could not explain it. There was no logical reason. Everything had been in place, and yet the blessing vanished, as though someone had reached into the future and stolen it before it could arrive. If this has ever happened to you, even once, go to the comments right now and write these words. I have experienced this. Write it, not as a performance, not for anyone else. Write it as an act of honesty, because honesty is the first gate you must pass through before any real transformation can begin. And if you write it, I promise you, by the end of this teaching, you will understand exactly why it happened, and you will have the tools to make sure it never happens again. What I am about to describe is the most widespread and least understood spiritual disease of our generation. I call it the leaky vessel syndrome, and it is killing more dreams than failure, more destinies than poverty, and more potential than any external circumstance ever could. The leaky vessel is the person who cannot hold a blessing in silence. The person who, the moment something good begins to form in their life, feels an overwhelming, almost physical compulsion to announce it, to share it, to expose it to the world before it has had the chance to take root. This compulsion is not random. It operates through two precise mechanisms, one psychological, one spiritual, and both are devastating. The psychological mechanism. Neuroscience has confirmed what the sages understood millennia ago. When you announce an intention publicly, when you tell people about a goal you have not yet achieved, your brain releases a surge of dopamine, the same chemical it releases when you actually accomplish something. This is critical to understand. Your brain does not distinguish between the announcement and the achievement. It treats the applause for the promise as if it were the applause for the result. And so the internal drive and the hunger, the urgency, the sacred restlessness that was supposed to fuel your work is satisfied prematurely. You celebrated the seed as though it were the harvest. You consumed the reward before you earned it. And now, The engine that was meant to carry you to the finish line has no fuel left. This is why people post their New Year's resolutions on the 1st of January and have abandoned them by the 15th. This is why people share their business ideas in online forums and lose all passion within weeks. This is why someone can announce a book they are going to write and that book never ever gets written. The announcement was the achievement. The brain was satisfied. The work became unnecessary. This is not weakness. This is biology. And the only defense against it is silence. The spiritual mechanism. But there is a deeper layer, a layer that psychology cannot fully explain. And this is where the Torah illuminates what science can only approximate. When you speak of an unformed blessing, a deal that has not yet closed, a project that has not yet materialized, a transformation that has not yet solidified, you are not merely sharing information. You are exposing a delicate, embryonic spiritual energy to the chaotic frequencies of the outside world. You are inviting the consciousness of 1,000 other minds into your creation. And what are the dominant energies of the human mind? Envy, doubt, fear, scarcity. Even from those who love you most, your mother, your brother, your closest friend, a subconscious thought can arise. Why him and not me? Or, I hope it works out, but it sounds too good to be true. Or simply, that will never last. They may not even be aware of this thought, but the thought exists. And in the spiritual realm, thoughts are not passive. They are forces. They are frequencies. They interact with the delicate energetic structure of your developing blessing like static disrupting a radio signal. This is the Ayin Hara, the evil eye. And I need you to hear me clearly. This is not a superstition. This is not folklore. This is a spiritual law, documented in the Talmud, elaborated in the Kabbalah, and confirmed by every serious student of Torah who has ever lived. The Talmud in Tractate Bava Metzia teaches, Ayin Hara Metsuya Ela Badavar Hasamui Min Hayin. Blessing is found only in that which is hidden from the eye. Read that again. Blessing is found only in that which is hidden from the eye, not in what is broadcast, not in what is displayed, not in what is announced, in what is hidden, in what is guarded, in what is protected by silence. The cost of living as a leaky vessel is a life of almosts, a life of deals that mysteriously collapse at the last moment, a life of brilliant ideas that never take form, a life of relationships that sour for reasons you cannot identify, a life of arriving at the end of your days and looking back at a museum of unfulfilled potential, haunted by the ghosts of what could have been, if only you had learned to hold your tongue. What if I told you that the key to defeating the leaky vessel syndrome was encoded in the Torah thousands of years ago? What if I told you that the greatest patriarchs and prophets of Israel understood this law of silence as the supreme technology of creation? The sages had a phrase for this principle, Sod Hashem la Yereav. The secret of God is for those who fear Him. The deepest blessings are not for those who broadcast, they are for those who guard. Let me show you the proof. Joseph. The vessel that leaked in the book of Genesis, chapter 37, we meet Joseph. He is 17 years old. He is brimming with divine potential. God grants him 2 prophetic dreams, visions of his ultimate destiny as a ruler over his family and eventually over all of Egypt. These dreams are sacred seeds. They are embryonic blessings of the highest order. They contain within them the entire future architecture of Joseph's greatness. And what is the very first thing Joseph does? The Torah is explicit. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. He does it again. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren. He could not help himself. The blessing was burning inside him, and he needed an audience. He needed witnesses. He needed his brothers to see him as the chosen one, the favored son, the future king. The result was immediate. The result was catastrophic. His brothers' Ayin Hara, their concentrated jealousy, was fully and violently activated. They conspired against him. They stripped him of his coat. They threw him into a pit, and they sold him into slavery. The Kabbalists, particularly the Zohar on Parashat Vayeshev, teach a profound and terrifying lesson here. Joseph's suffering, the pit, the slavery, the false accusations, the years of imprisonment in Egypt, was not a random punishment. It was the direct cause and effect consequence of his own spiritual immaturity. He had failed to protect the seed of his destiny. He had broadcast the blessing before it had taken root, and in doing so, he had invited the forces of chaos, destruction, and delay into his own life. His path to the palace was made infinitely longer, infinitely more painful, infinitely more humiliating, because he could not keep his mouth shut. Joseph was a leaky vessel, and he paid for it with 13 years of suffering. Moses, the vessel that was sealed now, contrasts Joseph with the supreme master of spiritual silence, Moses. In the book of Exodus, when God first appears to Moses at the burning bush, a moment of unimaginable divine intimacy, he gives Moses the greatest mission ever entrusted to a human being. Go to Pharaoh and liberate the entire nation of Israel. Consider the magnitude of this moment. The Creator of the universe is speaking directly to you. He is telling you that you are His chosen instrument for the most consequential act of redemption in human history. If this had happened to Joseph, he would have called his brothers before sunset. But Moses does not announce. Moses does not broadcast. God's specific instruction is not to speak. It is to act, to go, to move, in silence. Later, when Moses ascends Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, the pinnacle of all human history, the moment when heaven and earth touched, he is enveloped in a cloud for 40 days and 40 nights. The text says, "The people did not know what had become of him." He was in total concealment, total hiddenness. The greatest revelation in the history of creation was given in the most profound state of secrecy. Moses understood what Joseph did not. Divine energy is formative. It is shy. It is delicate. It must be nurtured in silence and darkness, like a seed beneath the earth, before it can emerge in its full, unstoppable glory. Joseph spoke, and his path led to a pit. Moses was silent, and his path led to Sinai. This is the Torah's hidden code. This is the law that governs the flow of blessing. Revelation requires concealment. True power is incubated in silence. Abraham, silence as the source of strength. There is yet another profound example in the life of Abraham, our father. In Genesis chapter 22, God commands Abraham to take his son Isaac, his beloved, his long-awaited miracle child, to Mount Moriah for the Akedah, the binding, the ultimate test of faith ever given to a human being. The Torah says, "And Abraham rose early in the morning." That is all. He did not call a family council. He did not seek Sarah's opinion. He did not gather his servants and ask for their thoughts. He did not post on social media asking whether this felt like a legitimate divine command or a midlife crisis. He rose. He moved. In silence. The Midrash Rabbah teaches that Satan himself, the prosecuting angel, the embodiment of spiritual opposition, appeared on the road to stop Abraham. He created physical obstacles. He whispered doubt. He reasoned with Abraham. He appealed to his love for his son. But Abraham had not spoken of his mission. He had not diluted the divine command with human commentary. He had not invited anyone else's consciousness into the sacred space between himself and God. And because of this, the doubt could not penetrate. The opposition could not find a crack. Abraham completed the test, and in doing so, he secured the covenant for all generations. Silence gave him power. Silence gave him focus. Silence gave him the strength to accomplish what no human being before or since has ever done. The pattern across the Torah is unmistakable and absolute. The patriarchs and prophets who changed the course of human history were not the ones who talked about what they were going to do. They were the ones who did it in silence and let God reveal the results in His perfect timing. Before I continue, I need something from you. If you are currently building something in silence, or if you are ready to begin, go to the comments right now and write these words. My work will speak louder than my words. Write it not as a comment. Write it as a covenant. Write it as a spiritual declaration between you and the Creator. Because when you write something with intention, something shifts inside you. A door closes to the old pattern, and a new door, a silent door, begins to open. Write it now, and then let us continue. Let me tell you about a man I will call Avi. He came to me several years ago, and his story became one of the most important lessons I have ever witnessed firsthand. I share it with his permission, and I share it because I know there are people watching right now who are living the exact same pattern he was trapped in. Avi was sharp, driven. He had been working in commercial real estate for 3 years, grinding his way up from nothing. He was the son of immigrants. His father had worked in a factory for 30 years. His mother cleaned houses. Avi carried their sacrifices on his shoulders like a weight that never lifted. He did not just want success for himself, he needed it as proof that his parents' suffering had not been in vain. After months of relentless effort, cold calls, rejected offers, sleepless nights, meals eaten standing up in parking lots between property viewings, Avi had finally negotiated his way into a deal that would change his life. It was a commercial lease arrangement on a retail property in a part of the city that was about to be transformed by a new transit development. The details were complex, but the bottom line was simple. The projected profit was just over $200,000. For Avi, this was not just money. You must understand this. This was not a number on a spreadsheet. This was vindication. This was the moment he had been working toward since the day he watched his father come home from the factory with bleeding hands and a broken spirit. This was the proof that Avi was not destined for that same life. This was his ticket out, his family's ticket out. The terms were agreed. The lawyers were reviewing. Everything was moving, and Avi could not contain himself. He called his father first. He described every detail of the deal. He heard his father's voice crack with emotion, and that sound of his father finally being proud of him, was more intoxicating than any drug on earth. He called his brother. His brother immediately started asking about how much he would invest, where the family would go on holiday, whether Avi would buy a new car. He met his 3 closest friends for dinner at a restaurant he could not yet afford. He ordered freely. He described the deal in vivid detail. He did not just share the profit. He described the next deal, and the one after that. He painted a picture of a future empire. His friends were captivated. They raised their glasses. They toasted to Avi's success. He was not sharing news. He was performing. He was not celebrating a victory. He was consuming a blessing that had not yet arrived. For 10 days, Avi lived on the high of their admiration. And then the phone rang. It was the financing partner, a man who had been solid, reliable, enthusiastic from the beginning. But his voice was different now, tight, careful. He spoke of a sudden internal policy review, a change in their risk assessment framework. The funding was being pulled, effective immediately. Avi felt the blood drain from his face. He spent the next 72 hours in a state of controlled panic. He called every lender he knew, He rewrote the terms. He offered concessions. But the window was closing, and every door he knocked on opened onto another wall. The deal collapsed. $200,000 evaporated. Not because of the market, not because of his strategy, not because of any external force he could name. But the money was not the worst part. The worst part was the phone calls he now had to make. He had to call his father, the same father whose voice had cracked with pride. He had to tell him it was over. He could hear the silence on the other end of the line. Not anger, something worse. The quiet sound of a father readjusting his expectations for his son. Going back to the old familiar belief that maybe success was not meant for people like them. He had to face his brother, who had already mentally spent Avi's money. He had to sit across from his friends, the same friends who had raised their glasses 10 days ago and absorbed their pity, their awkward reassurances, their barely concealed relief that this had happened to Avi and not to them. The shame was not a feeling. It was a physical weight. Avi told me he could barely get out of bed for a week, not from laziness, from devastation, from the humiliation of having announced a victory that never came. When he finally came to see me, he sat across from me in my study, and I could see it in his eyes. The confusion, the anger, the feeling of being cursed by invisible forces. He said to me, "Rabbi, I did everything right. I worked harder than anyone I know. I found the deal. I negotiated the terms. And it was taken from me. What did I do wrong?" I opened the Torah. I turned to Genesis 37, and I read him the story of Joseph. I showed him how Joseph received the dream, how the dream was sacred, embryonic, divine, and how Joseph, burning with the same need for validation that burned in Avi, told his brothers everything. And I showed him the result, and they hated him yet the more. I watched the recognition cross Avi's face like a sunrise after the longest night of his life. He saw himself in the text. He was Joseph, his father, his brother, his friends. They were his brothers. His excited announcements were his dreams. Their congratulations, however genuine they seemed, were laced with the invisible, subconscious poison of Ayin Hara. The text became a mirror, and in that mirror, Avi finally saw the source of his disease. He made a decision in my study that afternoon. He would no longer be a victim of his own mouth. He would no longer be a leaky vessel. He made a vow, not to me, but to the Creator, that he would never again speak of a blessing until it was fully formed, concrete, and irreversible. At first, nothing changed externally. The money was gone. The deal was dead. The shame was still fresh. But internally, a revolution had begun. The frantic, needy energy that had defined Avi for years, the desperate need to be seen, to be validated, to be told he was enough, was replaced by something new. A quiet, a stillness, a calm that he had never experienced before. The following week, Avi began working on a new deal. It was smaller, more modest, less dramatic. He told no one, not his father, not his brother, not his friends, not even his wife. He told me it was the loneliest he had ever felt, working without an audience, building without applause, moving through his days with this enormous secret burning inside him and no one to share it with. But it also felt powerful. He described it as a feeling of being full, as though the energy that used to leak out through his words was now staying inside him, accumulating, building pressure, creating momentum. Within 5 weeks, the deal closed. No complications, no last-minute collapses, no mysterious reversals. The profit was around $40,000, a fraction of the lost deal. But Avi told me it felt more real, more solid, more satisfying than the promise of $200,000 ever had. He had not just earned money, he had mastered a law. He applied the principle again and again, Each time in silence, each time with the same quiet, focused intensity. Within 6 months, he had closed 3 more deals. Within 1 year, he had paid off every debt he owed. Within 2 years, he had built a property portfolio worth 7 figures. He came to see me after the 2nd year. He was a different man, not just financially, spiritually. The desperate, needy energy was gone. In its place was the calm, solid presence of a man who no longer needed the world to tell him who he was. He said to me, "Rabbi, I did not change my strategy. I changed my vessel. I stopped leaking, and for the first time in my life, the blessings stayed." Avi learned what Joseph learned, but without 13 years of slavery. He learned what Moses already knew. He learned what Abraham demonstrated on the road to Moriah. You do not talk about what you are building. You build it, and then you let the results speak for themselves. The results are always louder than the announcements. Now let me give you the practical application. I call it the Fortified Vessel Protocol. It is a 3-step system to transform you from a leaky vessel into a fortified container for God's blessings. This is not a suggestion. This is not a self-help technique. This is a spiritual law with practical steps. And if you apply it with discipline for 30 days, you will feel the change in every dimension of your life. Step 1. The vow of silence. This is the most critical step, and it is the most difficult. From this moment forward, you will make a sacred commitment, a vow before God, to never again speak of your plans, your goals, your new ventures, your potential promotions, or any unformed blessing to anyone. Anyone. This includes your spouse. This includes your parents. This includes your best friend. An unformed blessing is like a newborn child. You would not carry a newborn into a storm. You would not expose a newborn to a crowd of strangers. You would not hand a newborn to someone and say, "Tell me what you think." You would protect it. You would shield it. You would keep it warm and safe and close to your chest. Your goals are your spiritual newborns. Treat them accordingly. The principle beneath this step is one of the most profound teachings in all of Torah. Dibur bor olam, speech creates worlds. When God created the universe, He did not think it into existence. He spoke it. Let there be light. Words are creative forces. They shape reality. They build structures in the spiritual realm that either support or undermine your material life. When you speak of a potential future, you are creating a fragile, energetic architecture. The moment another consciousness interacts with that structure, with all its fears, its doubts, its envy, its projections, that architecture is compromised. In most cases, it is weakened. In many cases, it is destroyed. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is the incubator. It is the sacred darkness in which the spiritual DNA of your goal can replicate and strengthen without interference. You speak of the victory only when the battle is won. You announce the deal only when the money is in your account. You share the news of the promotion only when you are sitting in the new chair. Until then, your lips are sealed, not by fear, by wisdom, by divine law. Step 2. The action anchor. Silence without action is daydreaming. It is fantasy dressed in spiritual clothing. And God does not bless fantasies. He blesses work. Every single day, without exception, you must take one concrete physical action that moves you closer to your silent goal. This is the action anchor. It is the physical proof to the universe and to heaven that you are not passively waiting for a miracle. You are actively co-creating one. If your goal is to build a business, make one call, write one page of your plan, research one competitor, send one email. If your goal is to get out of debt, negotiate one payment, cancel one subscription, pick up one extra hour of work. If your goal is to write a book, write one paragraph, just one. The size of the action does not matter. What matters is the daily, unbroken rhythm of it. Consistency is what creates spiritual weight. A single day's action is a pebble. 30 consecutive days is a boulder. The Kabbalistic principle behind this step is it-aruta deltata, an arousal from below. The spiritual realms above respond to initiative from the physical realm below. When you take action, you send a signal upward. You tell God, I am not a spectator, I am not a dreamer, I am your partner in this creation, and God responds to partners. He does not respond to passengers. Silence builds the container. Action fills it. Daily consistency seals it. Step 3. The gratitude deposit. At the end of each day, before you close your eyes, you will perform one final act. You will not speak of your future goals. You will not review your ambitions. Instead, you will write down one past blessing, one thing that has already fully materialized in your life, for which you are genuinely grateful. This is the gratitude deposit, and it is far more powerful than it appears. When you focus on what you hope to have, you vibrate at the frequency of lack. You are reaching for something that is not yet yours. But when you focus on what you already possess, a working body, a child who loves you, a roof over your head, the breath in your lungs, you vibrate at the frequency of abundance, and abundance attracts more of itself. You are not making a wish. You are making a deposit of positive, realized, materialized energy into your spiritual account. And that account is what funds the manifestation of your silent goals. The Zohar teaches that the gates of heaven open widest for the voice of gratitude, not the voice of petition, not the voice of complaint, the voice that says, I see what you have given me, and I am grateful. Gratitude is not politeness, it is technology. It recalibrates your frequency, and it signals to the universe that you are a vessel worthy of receiving more. Now let me tell you about 3 people who applied the Fortified Vessel Protocol and experienced transformations that no amount of strategy or hustle could have produced. Story 1. Daniel was a gifted software engineer living in London. He was brilliant. Everyone who knew him said the same thing. Daniel is the smartest person in the room. But Daniel had a problem. He had a folder on his laptop. He showed it to me once, containing over 15 fully fleshed out ideas for software products. Some of them were genuinely revolutionary, the kind of ideas that could change industries, and not a single one of them had ever been built. The pattern was always the same. Daniel would have a breakthrough idea, a flash of inspiration that would keep him up until 3 in the morning, furiously scribbling notes. By the next day, the excitement would be overwhelming. He would tell his flatmate over breakfast. He would message his friends in their group chat. He would post in a developer forum, carefully framing the idea as a hypothetical, but really fishing for admiration. The responses were always encouraging at first. That's amazing, Dan. You should definitely build that. You could be the next big thing. And then, inevitably, the qualifying voices would arrive. Hasn't Spotify already tried something like that? The market might be too crowded. Sounds cool, but do you really have time for a side project? Each comment was a pinprick in the balloon of Daniel's enthusiasm. Within 2 weeks, the fire would be dead. The idea would join the graveyard in his folder. And Daniel would wait for the next flash of inspiration, not realizing that the problem was never the idea. The problem was what he did with the idea in its first 48 hours of life. When Daniel came to me, he was not just frustrated. He was beginning to question whether he was capable of finishing anything. The identity of the person who never finishes was calcifying around him like cement. I taught him the Fortified Vessel Protocol. He chose his strongest idea, a platform that used machine learning to help small businesses optimize their pricing, and he took the vow of silence. He told absolutely no one, not his flatmate, not his friends, not the developer forum. His action anchor was simple and non-negotiable: 1 hour of coding every evening after work. No matter how tired he was, no matter what else was happening. 1 hour. His gratitude deposit each night was thanking God for his existing job, which paid his bills and gave him the stability to build on the side. The first 2 weeks were agonizing. Daniel told me later that the urge to share his progress was almost physical. He would be coding and think, if I just showed this one feature to Marcus, he would be so impressed. But he held the vow. He stayed silent. After 30 days, he had a skeleton of the product. After 60 days, the core features were working. After 90 days, he had a functional prototype that he could demonstrate. Only then, after 90 days of silent, disciplined work, did he show it to one person, a former professor who had deep connections in the venture capital world. Not for applause, for strategic collaboration. That professor looked at the prototype for 15 minutes and said, "Daniel, this is the most impressive thing a student of mine has ever built. I need to make a call." Within 3 months, Daniel had a term sheet from an investor. Within 6 months, his company was acquired for £1.4 million. Daniel went from a folder of dead dreams to a 7-figure reality, not by becoming smarter, not by working harder, by sealing his vessel and letting the pressure build until the blessing had no choice but to materialize. Story 2. Sarah was a ceramicist, an artist with extraordinary talent and absolutely no results to show for it. For 4 years, she had been trying to launch a homeware brand. Her pieces were beautiful. Anyone who saw them said the same thing. These belong in a gallery, but the brand never launched. The website was perpetually almost ready. The collection was never quite complete. The reason was invisible to Sarah, but it was obvious to anyone watching. Every time she created something new, before the glaze was even dry, she would photograph it and post it on social media. She would share it with the caption, "Working on something exciting. What do you think?" The likes would pour in. The comments would glow. "Stunning. Can't wait to see the collection. You're so talented." And Sarah would feel warm, validated, acknowledged. But she would not feel driven, because the applause had already arrived. The dopamine hit of public validation had satisfied the hunger that was supposed to fuel the work. Every like was a tiny leak in her vessel, and by the time she sat down the next day to create the next piece, the energy was gone. The fire was out. The blessed momentum had evaporated into the digital ether of strangers' approval. When Sarah came to me, she was on the verge of giving up entirely. She said, "Rabbi, maybe I'm just not meant to be a businesswoman. Maybe I should just keep this as a hobby." I looked at her and I said, "Sarah, there is nothing wrong with your talent. There is nothing wrong with your ambition. There is something wrong with your vessel. And I am going to teach you how to seal it." She implemented the Fortified Vessel Protocol. The first thing she did was radical. She deleted her social media accounts. All of them. Not deactivated, deleted. She told me it felt like losing a limb. She stopped talking about her business to anyone. Her colleagues at her day job, who were used to hearing weekly updates about the brand that never launched, suddenly heard nothing. One of them asked, "What happened to the ceramics thing?" Sarah smiled and said, "Oh, I'm just keeping busy." Her action anchor was elegant in its simplicity. Create one finished piece every week, not sketched, not planned, finished, glazed, ready to sell. Her gratitude deposit every night was thanking God for her hands, for the clay, for the small studio she rented above a laundrette, for the kiln that worked even though it was 20 years old. She worked in silence for 6 months. 180 days of creating without showing. building without broadcasting, pouring her energy into the work instead of into the performance of the work. At the end of 6 months, she had a complete collection of 42 pieces. She photographed them professionally. She built a simple website in a single weekend. And she personally visited 3 independent boutique shops in her city with samples. All 3 placed orders within 2 weeks. Within 6 months of launch, her pieces were featured in a national design magazine. Within 12 months, she had a waiting list. Within 18 months, she left her day job. Her annual revenue was over £400,000. She said to me, with tears in her eyes, "Rabbi, the moment I stopped performing and started creating, the universe had no choice but to respond. The blessing was always there. I was just leaking it out through my mouth before it could arrive." Story 3. Yossi was a financial advisor. On paper, he should have been successful. He was articulate. He was knowledgeable. He understood markets and products better than most of his peers. But Yossi was drowning. He owed over $75,000 in personal debt, credit cards, a car loan, a line of credit that had spiraled beyond control. The cruelest irony of Yossi's life was that he spent his days advising other people on how to manage their money while his own finances were in ruins. And the pattern that was destroying him was the same pattern that had destroyed Avi and Daniel and Sarah. Every month without fail, Yossi would announce to his wife, to his parents, to his brother, that a big client was about to sign, that this month would be different, that the tide was about to turn. "I've got a meeting next week with a prospect worth $200,000 in assets under management. If this closes, everything changes." His wife would nod. His mother would say a prayer. His brother would say, "Finally." And the prospect would not sign, or the meeting would be rescheduled and never happen, or the client would go with another firm at the last moment, month after month, promise after promise, announcement after empty announcement. Yossi's words had become worthless, not just to his family, to himself. He no longer believed his own declarations. He had trained his own brain and his own spirit to associate his words with failure. Every time he opened his mouth about a future success, a part of him flinched, already anticipating the collapse. His wife had stopped reacting to his promises. That was the thing that cut deepest. Not anger, not disappointment, just a quiet, resigned absence of faith. When he said, "I think this month is going to be big," she would simply say, "Okay," and return to what she was doing. She had stopped believing him, and in her silence, Yossi could hear the death of something sacred between them. When he applied the Fortified Vessel Protocol, the change was immediate and absolute. He stopped making promises, completely. He stopped announcing prospects. He stopped predicting outcomes. He simply worked. His action anchor was ruthless in its simplicity. 10 prospecting calls every single day. Not 5, not 8 on a good day, and 3 on a bad one. 10, every day, no matter what. His gratitude deposit each night was thanking God for the roof over his family's head, for the food on the table, and for the fact that despite everything, his wife was still there. The first month, nothing happened. The calls went nowhere, no new clients. The second month, nothing happened. The third month, nothing happened. But Yossi was different. The silence had changed him. He was no longer performing for an audience. He was no longer carrying the weight of public expectation. He was just doing the work. And the work, without the pressure of premature announcement, was sustainable. It was peaceful. It was even, in a way he had never experienced before, enjoyable. In the 4th month, he closed a significant client. He did not call his mother. He did not tell his brother. He did not announce it to his wife over dinner with a dramatic flourish. He quietly allocated the commission and paid down $15,000 of debt. In the 5th month, another client, another 18,000 paid off. By the 8th month, he had a rhythm, a steady, silent rhythm of work and results and debt reduction. No fanfare, no applause, just the quiet accumulation of real, tangible, irreversible progress. Within 14 months, the entire 75,000 was cleared. Within 20 months, he had 40,000 in savings. Within 2 years, over 100,000. One evening, his wife came into his study. She looked at him for a long time, and she said something that he will remember for the rest of his life. "You are not the same man I married. You are quieter, you are calmer, and you are stronger than I have ever seen you." What changed? Yossi looked at her and said, "I stopped being a man of words and became a man of action. I stopped telling you what I was going to do and started letting what I did speak for itself." His wife cried, and for the first time in years, the tears were not from frustration. They were from relief, from pride, from the recognition that the man she had married had finally become the man she had always believed he could be. Now I know the question that is forming in your mind, because it is the question of our entire culture. It is the question that the modern world has been conditioned to ask, and it goes something like this. "But Rabbi, isn't it good to share? Don't we need to network, to brainstorm, to get feedback? Am I supposed to become a hermit?" I have heard this question 1,000 times, and it is a good question, but it is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what I am teaching. Let me be very clear. This teaching is not a call to isolation. The Torah does not teach isolation. The Torah teaches discernment, and there is a vast, unbridgeable difference between the two. There is a profound difference between sharing for the sake of collaboration and sharing for the sake of validation. One builds empires, the other builds prisons of unfulfilled potential. When you bring a fully formed idea, a working prototype, a finished manuscript, a registered business with its first paying client, to a trusted mentor who has the expertise to help you refine it, that is collaboration. That is strategic. That is wise. When you post a half-formed dream on social media to see how many likes it accumulates, that is validation seeking. That is the leaky vessel in action. That is spiritual self-sabotage. The Fortified Vessel Protocol is not about whether you speak. It is about when you speak, and to whom you speak, and in what state the blessing is when you speak of it. You do not seek feedback on a seed. You seek feedback on a sapling. You do not network with a dream. You network with a prototype. You do not ask for opinions on a wish. You invite collaboration on a reality. The error of the leaky vessel is timing. It is seeking validation too early in the process, before the blessing has had the chance to root itself, to develop its own structural integrity, to become strong enough to withstand the weight of other people's consciousness. You must become your own source of validation during the silent phase, your faith in God, your commitment to your action anchor, your nightly gratitude deposit. These must be enough to sustain you, and if they are not enough, that itself is a sign that you have been addicted to external approval, and this protocol is exactly the medicine you need. Stop looking for cheerleaders and start looking for co-builders. And the only way to attract co-builders is to first build something worth co-building, alone, and in silence. So here is my challenge to you. And I do not use the word lightly. This is not a casual experiment. This is not a try-it-and-see suggestion. This is a declaration of war against the pattern that has been sabotaging your life for years. For the next 30 days, you will commit to the Fortified Vessel Protocol in its entirety. You will become a sacred container for your own destiny. 1. Choose one, and only one, major goal you are currently working on or wish to begin. This is now your silent goal, not 5 goals, not 3. 1. Write it on a piece of paper. fold it, place it in a drawer. This goal is now classified. It is between you and God alone. No one else has clearance. 2. On a separate piece of paper, write the vow of silence. I will not speak of my goal until it is a concrete reality. My work is my prayer. My results will be my testimony. Sign your name at the bottom. Place this paper where you will see it every single day. On your mirror, on your desk, in your wallet. Every time you feel the urge to share your progress, you will see this vow, and you will remember who you are becoming. 3. Tonight, not tomorrow, tonight. Perform your first action anchor and your first gratitude deposit. Take one small concrete step toward your goal. If your goal is to write a book, write one paragraph. If your goal is to start a business, research one competitor. If your goal is to get out of debt, call one creditor. Then, write down one past blessing you are grateful for. One real thing that already exists in your life that you are thankful for. Do not miss a single day for 30 days, not one. Consistency is the currency of transformation. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and a single broken day is a crack in your vessel. And here is a final instruction for those who are truly serious. When people ask you what you are working on, and they will ask, have a simple, vague, and unremarkable answer ready. Oh, just keeping busy, a few small things, the usual. Do not lie, but do not reveal. Your future is a holy secret between you and the Creator. It is not a topic for casual conversation. It is not material for small talk at a dinner party. Protect it like the treasure it is. Guard it like a mother guards her newborn child. The Talmud teaches, Ayin Hara metsuya ela badavar hasamui min ha'yin. Blessing is found only in that which is hidden from the eye. Your silent work is where the blessing lives. Let the world see your results, not your process. And now, I want to leave you with a blessing. May the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who created the universe with a word and sustains it in silence, grant you the strength to seal your lips and the discipline to move your feet. May He transform you from a leaky vessel, tossed on the waves of public opinion and drowning in the desperate need for applause, into a fortified vessel, a mighty ship with an unbreachable hull, capable of carrying the vast and immeasurable treasures He wishes to bestow upon you. May you learn the profound and terrible power of silence, the sacred art of building in the darkness before the dawn, of creating in secret what the world will one day marvel at in the open. May your hands be strong when the work is hard. May your mind be clear when the doubts are loud. May your heart be filled with the quiet, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you are not working alone. You are partnered with the Creator Himself. May you become a person of few words and many results. May your life become a testimony not to what you promised, but to what you delivered. Not to what you announced, but to what you built. Not to what you said you would become, but to what you quietly, steadily, silently became. And may your results, when they are finally revealed in God's perfect timing, speak with the thunderous voice of 1,000 announcements, silencing every doubter, rewarding every moment of discipline, and inspiring every seeker who has been waiting to hear that there is another way to live. The universe is watching your actions, not your announcements. God is measuring your work, not your words. Go now. Build in silence. Let your success make the sound. Shalom.